Hi, welcome to Ladies of Another View on Beck. Thank you for spending your time on Monday afternoon with us. I'm joined here with Jan, and we have in studio Austin Holgard. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Patty. Thanks, Jan. Thank you.
Austin has a master's in bioethics from the University of Mary, and he also works in the Office of the President. So you're just kind of an all-around guy, and today, later, just so that you know, so that you stick around for the whole show, like, why wouldn't you, right? Later in the show, we have Patrick Navikovsky, who's written 100 Ways That Pope John Paul II Changed the World. And if you can believe it, it was the 40-year anniversary of his assassination attempt last week. And there are some remarkable things that he actually wrote about for Fox News, and I came across the article, and I thought we're going to talk about that later on in the show. Right now, we're going to talk about bioethics, especially when we want to talk about when you start mixing human DNA with experimental animals. But first, how about, Austin, you tell us, what is bioethics?
Yeah, sure. So bioethics is a fairly new discipline, and it's one of these disciplines that's very interdisciplinary. So for instance, just to give you an overview of like what my class makeup was, it was nurses, physicians, lawyers, nonprofit leaders, philosophers, theologians, priests, religious sisters, basically anyone who has sort of a role in caring for people. We're interested in how to do so ethically. And that's kind of the sort of like simple version of bioethics. But it crosses over into everything from healthcare to biology to experimental research to health policy to how do we come up with like legal structures to safeguard those who might be vulnerable in our population. And so it's pretty broad, but basically it's to say it simply would be like how do we take care of each other ethically? How do we understand the human person, and how do we move about the world with advancing technologies and everything like that in an ethical manner? And so it's a broad study.
So how do you decide that this is a medium that you want to go into? I mean, you named all of those different professions. Like, can't we get all lawyers and all judges and all doctors to take these kind of courses?
Well, I think it'd be great if many do. Now, oftentimes, like if you're in a business course, for example, at the University of Mary, all of our business folks have to take business ethics and things like that. And so that's really in sort of the sphere of the business world, you know, ethics of the economy, of fair trading and things like this. Healthcare is really for those who are interested or work directly in that realm. And so lawyers are often ones who are getting like tricky situations like Terri Schiavo case or things like this. And then the nurses are trying to figure out like, well, what can't do in the rooms that I'm seeing my patients in, or all the questions of euthanasia and what's the ordinary care that I should be giving. When it says do good and don't do harm, like what does that mean? So there's, in that way, when you start talking about what's good, what's harmful, like what are human beings made for, those are then philosophical and theological questions. And so that's where you have lots of your philosophers or your theologians jumping into the mix as well.
And it's a more complicated world than the one that I grew up in high school and college, because there were no bioethics classes. You had biology, Sure. But it's a more complicated world right now. For instance, I want to talk about chimeras. Chimeras? Chimeras.
There you go.
If you see them, this is how they're spelled, with a CH, IMERA. And what they are is it's a mixture of human DNA and cells mixed with animal ones. Here are the concerns. Scientists are cultivating a flock of such experimental creations called chimeras by injecting potent human cells into mice, rats, pigs, and cows, and also monkeys just recently. They hope the new combination might one day be used to grow human organs for transplants and study human illnesses to test, treatments and drugs. So that sounds really good, right? We're going to find cures. We're going to grow new organs. But what are the concerns?
Well, I think the concerns, there's many concerns. And so I think when you're talking about chimeras, you have to understand, well, exactly what are they doing? And so in the case of like the Chinese and California lab that were playing around with monkey embryos, they just wanted to see kind of how cells replicated, and you wonder then yourself, well, how careful are they in that, and what cells are they putting in there? And so it said, for instance, that they took stem cells. Well, what kind of stem cells? Were they embryonic human stem cells? Did it have nuclear data, like genetic material in there, which could inform the embryonic cell of the monkey? And then what? You know what I mean? Then that gets really dangerous, because you're really playing around with life. Does it have human dignity? Does it not? There's all sorts of questions that then get tossed into the debate. On the flip side, as you said, like there are really interesting things that might be out there where, if you were able to direct using adult stem cells or something like that, or some other method, where you could get a pig or something like that to develop human organs that could then be used for like a new heart or a new kidney when there's such a shortage out there, that would be like a real human benefit, and it would be in keeping with kind of how we use animals and how we treat animals ethically. But in terms of like, we take a pig, we make some sausage and everything like that. It's the same. If we were able to do that ethically, the same thing could be doing. Well, we could take that pig and then also use it to harvest human organs and things like that. There might be a way to do that, and so I think it all depends on like what the intention behind those researchers is. In this case of this Chinese lab and this California lab working together, I think it was not quite so nuanced, and so then you have to really worry about, well, what are they actually up to? What kind of things are going on there?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Chinese lab and the California lab working together put cells together so that perhaps what they were creating was part monkey, part human?
Well, it depends. I was looking around to see exactly what was going on, and it sounds like they used pluripotent cells, which is another way of saying adult stem cells. And so that's not necessarily indicative, though, of what kind of cells were used. Oftentimes, those are gathered from like the kidney or an umbilical cord or things like that, not harvested directly from an embryo, human embryo. Human embryos are what we call omnipotent, means that they have the ability to sort of like shift in kind of any way, but because of that, they're very unstable, and so you don't know exactly what they're going to do. It's why also like adult stem cells, which are seen by places like the Catholic Church and things like that, are as more morally illicit if used rightly, because they're not harvested in any way that's necessarily ethically compromised.
Well, Liz, I want to make sure everybody understands that right now. We only have a minute, so this is a good thing to make sure everybody understands. So adult stem cells, totally moral, because nobody dies in the collection of them, right? You can get them in different ways. But the embryonic stem cells then, they were gotten from an aborted fetus, or an aborted baby, right?
No, they'd be like when you take the sperm and the egg and they're artificially inseminated. They come together.
So you create it.
Yep, and so it's human life at its earliest stage. Then you would take that embryo, go into the nucleus and extract the stem cells from it. And what happens there is then the destruction of the human embryo, the destruction of a human being.
So you create the embryo to get the stem cells, and then you destroy the embryo, but it's human life, and so that's where the problem is.
Exactly.
Right, so, okay, we're going to leave it there for now. We have more to talk about when we come back with Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after-hours oasis of sanity. How can these people not see that they're just clowns?
We help simplify and educate you on things going on in the legislature and around the country.
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
But also having Lee Stack and Sid and Marty Croft stuff, and we've talked about that sometimes. It's bad.
Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
Pub 21, your one stop for fun, drinks, and food. Our spacious facility provides COVID-safe fun for you and all your friends. With nightly bingo and specials, you can be sure there's something to do for everyone. If you're staying in for the night, we've got you covered just across the way with Pub 21 Liquor. We have a wide variety of options, from wine to whiskey and everything in between. Stop in today at 1014 South 12th Street in Bismarck to see what all the buzz is about. You won't be disappointed.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Hi, welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck, and we are once again rejoined by Austin Holgard, who graduated with a master's in bioethics at University of Mary, and he also works for the president, Monsignor Shea. And we've been talking about the dangers in mixing human DNA with animal DNA, and basically the problem is when you take human embryos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the crux of sort of the moral implication is what's going on with the human embryo. You know, when egg and sperm meet, basically what happens there, as soon as you have an embryo, you have human life. And so what does that mean then? What do you owe each human life? And there's been a lot of, conversation and fighting over that in the political sphere in our sort of community as well these past few years since Roe v. Wade and everything like that. But I think that that only highlights the fact that we feel very strongly about human life and what that means and what it's owed. And so basically that's the crux of what's rubbing people the wrong way.
Well, that's a good segue into another topic I want to talk about. I want to talk about euthanasia, and not just euthanasia, but the case of Terri Schiavo. Now, it's been quite a few years, and not everybody is probably familiar with what happened. Here's Terri Schiavo. She was just a vibrant, young, healthy woman. She had some kind of stroke. There's different accusations. We don't know clearly what happened. But then she became what some people called a vegetable. But what her parents said was still life. They said she still did respond. And they could, see some interactions. And we know from so many stories that have been in the news where people have been in comas, but they could hear what was going on. And some people have come out of those comas and they said, I could hear everything, but I couldn't communicate. So we don't really know the level of life, how she was experiencing things. But the point is, she was alive. And she only needed nutrition with a tube. But her ex-husband, I don't even know if he was an ex, but he said, oh no, she wouldn't have wanted this. So they went back and forth in court, whether to deprive her of nutrition so that she would starve to death. In the end, the ex-husband won. The parents wanted to take care of her, but they let her starve to death. And that's wrong, right?
Yes, no, that's wrong. There was actually a lot going on in that case. So Terri Schiavo, as you said, people thought she was a vegetable. That's what the kind of the term is, right? She was in a persistent vegetative state is what they call it, right? And so what that doesn't mean is that you're actively dying. It just means there's a significantly reduced consciousness, right? But the body is still doing things. It's still taking in water. It's still taking in food. You're still able to breathe on your own. And you're still having like sleep cycles and things like that. And as you said, you watch these videos and she's like able to respond to people that she recognizes in a limited way, but like there's something definitely happening there. The trouble is the husband, who was estranged, definitely still married, which is kind of where things got really
married,
tricky.
but with another
woman
lady in his life and a couple kids. So
exactly.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, and so this is where Bobby Schindler, as we had talked about during the break, was another one of our graduates from the University of Mary Bioethics program.
And he's Terry's brother.
And he's Terry's brother, and so he tells us stories about his family, pleading, we will take care of Terri. We will take care of her. We'll give her her hydration and nutrition. Meanwhile, you have an estranged husband who's moving on with his life with another lady. There could be financial benefits and things like that with if Terri were to pass, and a huge court battle ensues, and then the court sides with this man, and they pull hydration nutrition, which was doing its job. The only time you can really pull hydration nutrition and call it care is if like the body's not able to handle it. Like if the person's getting pneumonia because you're feeding, then there might be something there. But if it's a body like yours and mine and we need food to survive, that's like the least amount of care that someone is owed as a human being. So they pulled the cord, Terri died, and people are left wondering, well, how could this have happened? You had somebody who was vulnerable, and you had something who clearly had a conflict of interest. How can we protect people who are in these vulnerable states? And how do we better identify these conflicts of interest? And where does the court's role in that?
And so that's where these bioethic classes would come in handy.
Right.
Handy's maybe not the right word, but that's why I was saying at the beginning, maybe more judges, more lawyers, more doctors need to be more immersed in this, not just financial ethics and business ethics. They need these bioethics as well.
Absolutely, because it allows you to see sort of the whole of everything, and so you don't just see things from well, this is the legal precedent that went back, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
You actually have to kind of weigh well, what is justice? What's care? What's a healthcare provider supposed to be doing? These types of things. What does a conflict of interest look like? Well, there is a legal term for that, but then there's also other things that come into play. And so one of the things studying bioethics does is it just integrates all these different fields of knowledge and just allows nurses to be better nurses, lawyers to be better lawyers, and so on.
So it's not a separate field of study in and of itself, or
it is
could it be?
It is and it isn't. And so there's definitely things where it's very this is definitely a role of bioethics. Ethics, properly understood, is a realm of philosophy, yes. But because it's drawing from so many different things, but at the same time, it's a very particular sector. There's things that aren't bioethics, and there's things that are bioethics. You can say it's its own field of study, but it necessarily relies on other areas of knowledge, much like the sciences do. Physics relies on biology, vice versa, things like this.
I love how you're able to lay it out, and you said the body was doing what it's supposed to do. It was taking in water, it was taking in nutrition, it was functioning. So, so a lot of that you can just say this is scientific, and then I guess you get into the moral, religious realm when you say, is it life? Yes. What is the value of that life?
Right.
So a lot of people and a lot of denominations, and the Catholics certainly believe that life is a value. That you don't judge it by, well, how can you perform in this world? Life is life. And what I love in so many stories where people have experienced through caring for others, we all grow better.
That's right.
As people and as communities, and that was, where part of Terry's value was. Who are we to decide?
Exactly. Oh, you're exactly right. The value of life, and I think that society is heading in a way where it really is more about your utility, and your identity is even your utility. You meet somebody, you say, "What do you do? What do you do for a living?" Oh, not, what's your, North Dakotans are great because we meet somebody and we say, what's your last name?
Exactly.
To try to figure out how you're related, where do you fit into the social structure?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But more and more, I think, like outside of the state, especially, you get where people are viewed morally as utility. Like, how can we basically use this person? What's their value to society? That type of thing. And if it's not very valuable, like in a pragmatic sense, then what's the use? Why
And
fight
that's
for it?
and that's why euthanasia has become so matter of fact for so many people. Like, well, why not? And they miss out on the spiritual realm of the value of your life.
Sure.
So yeah, so obviously euthanasia is wrong on all those fronts too.
Well, and then if you point to like Terri Schiavo's case, it just shows like how susceptible a whole society could become, where if you're not deemed valuable, then you're euthanized or whatever. And so I think people have to realize that there might be an attraction to being like figuring out how to do things scientifically, but oftentimes if you treat people solely on sort of like a utility type of platform, you're going to create a society which you don't want to live in.
Right, yeah. An inhumane society, definitely. Austin, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining
Patty.
us today.
Thanks,
It
Jen.
Great.
just flew
Thank
by. Coming up next, we have the author of 100 Ways John Paul II Changed the World, author Patrick Navikovsky, coming right up with Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Join us May 22nd as we take on the Northern Arizona Wranglers for Senior Scholarship Night. Every student deserves an opportunity. Help us, help our students. For more information, visit bismarckbucks.com/scholarship or call 701-595-0771.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Ever been in a cave before?
It's our first time.
All right.
Where are you going?
I'll see you at the car! How will we? The car! Your offer has been accepted. Ever bought a house before?
It's our first time.
All right.
Where are you going?
I'll see you at the closing. But how will we? The closing!
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Billings, your host of The Right Side with Doug Billings on Beck News. We bring you high-profile guests, ladies and gentlemen, exclusive guests. Now, you're not going to see these guests in most of the mainstream media outlets. Another thing that I do here is give guests a platform to speak freely. You're not going to see me censor anybody. Please join us, won't you? Weeknights right here on Beck TV and online at beck.news. Cheers.
Anyone over there.
Hi there. Hey, welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. It's funny with just the two of us.
It is. It's a little different.
We're the two that went to Napoleon together. That's
Yes.
coming up on a My Hometown segment.
Be fun.
Can't wait.
No
We
audio.
love Napoleon. We have coming up on this segment, I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. Patrick Navikovsky And he is the author of 100 Ways That Pope John Paul II Changed the World. I think there's actually way more than 100 ways. And it's been a while, and a lot of the young people don't even really know Pope John Paul II, but he was such a favorite among young adults, young people, and he was Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1994.
That's a big accolade.
It is. I mean, he really did change the world in that he brought down communism.
Big time, you know, and he came from it. He
came
knew
from
of it.
Yeah. He knew it. He was persecuted under it, and I think the seminary closed while he was in it, and he was persecuted, and he fought against them. When he became pope, the communists were not happy. I actually have Patrick's Voice, a book here, and one of the chapters was on how when Pope John Paul II, as a priest, before I became pope, he was in Warsaw, I think it was. No, Krakow, sorry.
Krakow.
He was in Krakow, and he put up a cross where he wanted to build a church, and the communists were furious. So they took the cross down.
They would.
And so he put it up again. And they took it down again.
So they were not really big fans of his to begin with. So that would have.
Oh my gosh.
That
no.
would have.
No, because it's like, what? How dare you? How dare you do this? And so he put it back up. They took it down again. Then he became bishop.
Whoop. Elevated.
And he put it up again. Until finally there was a church built there. And so later on he did become pope. And when he went back and visited Poland the first time, there were over 1 million people that came out. And I actually
That's a good showing.
I watched a documentary on it before, and the communists were furious because they were trying to keep everything under control. This is why we worry when the government shuts down churches.
Absolutely. You know, all of the people that gather to make changes in the world are going to gather in the church. They're going to gather in the restaurant, the bars, in people's homes. And that's all the places that have been shut down for a lot of people over the last at least a year.
Right.
And then some.
And why do people go to church? For their faith. And when it gets to their faith, that's going to override the government because people are willing to die for their faith. And a government that wants to control you, they're not going to like that. And that's the way it was in Warsaw, in Poland. And but Pope John Paul II, they gave them the courage. And then they also had the Workers' Party. They had that union with Lech Walesa. I know I'm saying his name wrong. Can you say it?
Lech is the first name.
Lech Walesa.
There you go.
And he was a Catholic, and he had a real union with Pope John Paul II. And they had a solidarity that they were not letting the communists push them around. And they defied the government's ruling and authoritative crackdown. And they couldn't stop it. It was beyond them. They had all their police out there, but it was like, oh my gosh, when you've got millions of people showing up and you've got your communist police out there, they were overpowered. And eventually, and the other thing is, now obviously we're having a bad connection. It's not like Jan and I just feel like talking for a while. We would love to have our guests, and I hope we're going to get our connection straight, and we will get Patrick on here. But what was amazing was how between Lech Walesa and Pope John Paul II, it was more than the communists could handle, and communism fell.
Well, if you have anybody that's probably in their maybe mid-30s or older, they're going to remember Pope John Paul II. Saying two doesn't seem right to me. It's always the second. That's how it was in the vernacular at the time, and that's how I'll always remember it. But that was also the time when Ronald Reagan was president, and they had a kinship or a friendship that was pretty strong as well. And in the United States, it wasn't just the people of the Catholic faith that were followers of Pope John Paul. There was also a lot of the Protestants, a lot of the Muslims, a lot of the, people from all over
Every
the
denomination.
world. Absolutely.
Every denomination.
It was phenomenal when you think about it. And we use that word kind of glibly, phenomenal, but it was on a different scale than what we've experienced with any pope since, at least in my lifetime.
Right.
Or any other world leaders in that way, because he really was a world leader, not just a ruler of a country that has an impact.
There hasn't been anybody else like him since. He was such a unifier. And when after he died and he was laid out, there millions and millions of people came. Now, Patrick, if we can get Patrick, he'll know all these details. But it went on for days, the people that came, and it was all denominations, and the Muslims loved him. And one of the things he said is, love is greater. And he also said, be not afraid. And one of the things I remember from Patrick's book was in 1976, he said the end times are upon us, where he could see that the world was changing in ways that it wasn't Mayberry anymore and Leave It to Beaver world, that the world was changing, and he was warning people that we needed to hang on to our values. And aren't we experiencing that right now?
Big time. You know, a lot of the youth of the time would go in droves to see this Pope speak. I know I'm going to forget the year, but about 2004, up in Toronto, he spoke to a youth conference.
World Youth Day. He would have World Youth Days, and people would travel all around the world, Toronto, Australia, and there were the crowds of young people. Here you've got this Pope. He always had a heart for young people, and he was very athletic. He liked to ski, he liked to hike, but of course as he got older, we saw him, he had Parkinson's, so we saw him age before our eyes, but he hung in there right up until the end. So talk about euthanasia. He wanted to show the value of life.
But, you know, his health declined somewhat because he was shot 4 times by an assassin.
Right. On May.
And a would-be assassin, as the photos show here. This was right when it happened.
Yep. And
May 13th, 1981.
81.
So where were you at that time? World events like that always make us think of where we were and what happened to us as well.
And he was shot by a trained assassin. That means the guy's not going to miss. He hit him 4 times, and Pope John Paul II did not die. Yeah. Just 6 weeks earlier, Hinckley, was it David Hinckley? No, Hinckley. Was that his first name? David Hinckley shot President Reagan 6 weeks earlier, and those two had a real bond. I've got some photos, I don't know if we'll bring them up this segment, of Pope John Paul II and President Reagan. President Reagan called the Pope his best friend.
That's pretty cool.
I know, and they met on many occasions, and they had a very close bond because together they were united in bringing down communism. And they worked together, the Pope and the President, 2 of my favorite people in the whole world, were working together, and they did it. So, okay, we're gonna have Patrick join us right after the break with Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Since opening in Hebron in 1940, Dakota Community Bank and Trust has been your hometown bank. Our mission has been to provide modern banking convenience with old-fashioned hometown service. We've grown with the communities we serve through year-round events, countless sponsorships, and nearly 7,000 hours of volunteering each year. Learn more about our 80-year history at dakotacommunitybank.com.
Hop in the rig and go down the road with me. We'll cover local and national stories that impact you. What happens with national debt? Does anybody even care anymore? Do you think Governor Burgum truly understands the legislative process?
You know, I think he's got a better understanding now than he did 2 years ago.
Why in the world are we having a conversation about being anti-vaccination? Down the Road with Joel Heitkamp weekdays at 5:30 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's best contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got my pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Back, and we are so glad that we are going to welcome Patrick Navikovsky. Said it right, right?
You got it. You got it.
We're having a Monday full of glitches, and so that was one. We couldn't get Patrick in until now, but welcome to the show.
Great to be with you guys.
I want our viewers to know that Patrick met Pope John Paul II 5 different times. And you're wearing the jacket that you wore when you first met him in 1997, was it?
Correct. Still fits, too.
Awesome.
Well, good for you. That's a triumph. We were talking about the assassination, and you recently wrote an article on some of the secrets that not everybody might be aware of. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you went over the details of what happened that day. It was May 13, 1981, and the Pope was in St. Peter's Square for his general audience. He was in an open-air Fiat Jeep, his Pope-mobile, and Muhammad Ali Agha opened fire, shot the Pope 4 times. 4 bullets struck him, 2 in his abdomen. He had a 5.5-hour surgery. He miraculously survived. What I wrote about in my article, which is in the opinion section of foxnews.com, is that the gunman was Turkish. So the Italian police government had a great investigation into what really happened that day. They found that Agha was hired by the Belgian government, which was then, sorry, not Belgium. I'm sorry. I keep saying Belgium. They were hired by a foreign government, one of the Soviet satellite states, and it'll come to me as I keep talking. But the trail kind of went cold there. And at the same time, Ronald Reagan instructed his CIA to do a thorough investigation into the assassination as well, kept it quiet. But they found that the real people that hired this man were actually the military intelligence unit of the Soviet Union. So it was Russia behind the attempt on John Paul II's life. And that was made clear in a book called A Pope and a President by Paul Kingor. And Paul wrote the introduction to my book. And I go into some of that detail in my book as well, that the Soviets were ultimately behind the hit on John Paul II.
And I know there were suspicions right from the start, although what guts, what nerve to try to assassinate the Pope because he inconveniences you. But why was not a bigger deal made out of it? Why wasn't there any international incident over it?
Well, John Paul II, I think, as he was recovering in his hospital bed, knew that the Soviet government was behind it, simply because he had butted heads with the communists so many times when he was Archbishop of Krakow, and even as a young priest, when there were demonstrators in this one city called Nova Huta. And I write about this in the Fox News article. The Soviets wanted to establish a city without God. They called it Nova Huta, the new city. And the Catholics there said, no, we do want God. They put up a cross. The communists tore it down. They put up another cross. John Paul celebrated Mass there as a priest, as a bishop, and his efforts prevailed. He kept at it. They kept at it through 1977, when they actually built a church, despite the communist best efforts. And John Paul, as Archbishop of Krakow, was the one that consecrated that church. So he knew that the communists didn't like him very much because he was not afraid of them. He wouldn't back down. 2 years earlier, he came into Poland in June of 1979 as a conquering hero, his first return to Poland after being elected Pope. And he drew millions of people. Now, these are the godless communists that wanted to minimize his message, that wanted to discredit him, and they failed miserably every time they tried. So 2 years later, he was having a great success in minimizing the communists and undermining everything they were trying to do. They wanted him dead, and they went through essentially through Muhammad Ali Aja to be the assassin that tried to kill John Paul II in 1981.
You know, it's remarkable that he forgave his would-be assassin, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he was on the way to the hospital. I mean, the hospital was 4 miles away. He had 2 bullets in his abdomen. One struck him in the finger. So he was bleeding all over the place and really losing a ton of blood. And as he's going to the hospital, he tells his aides, I forgive my brother who tried to kill me. And, you know, he's driving to the hospital. You think he would be thinking about, you know, just breathing and hanging on and trying to get there and get some medical attention. But his first thought was, I have to forgive this guy. Not only that, but he survived. He had a blood infection from tainted blood in the transfusion. And he had months and months of recovery. But by the fall, he was pretty much, the fall of 1981, he was pretty much getting back to normal. Although some of those effects of the shots that he took to the abdomen stayed with him for the rest of his life. Now, a year and a half later, he arranged for a camera crew to come with him to the prison where the gunman was being held. And he said to the prison officials, the prison door has to stay open. We don't want handcuffs on this guy. I'm going to go in there alone. Now, and he brought his own camera crew. He brought a video camera crew, and he brought photographers. And he wanted to show the world that forgiveness was not only possible, but that forgiveness is necessary. And then he went an even further step. He lobbied the Italian government to not only to let this guy out, but to pardon him completely and let him walk free. Now, that's rather extraordinary, because that's saying, I don't even want justice to be done. I want total mercy for this guy. And after about 2 decades, about almost 20 years, I think 15 years in the Italian prison, Muhammad Ali Aja was set free, but he was extradited back to his home country to face charges for another murder.
Well, many times on this program, we have said that evil doesn't hide itself anymore. It's just out there in the open. And one of the chapters of your book, you talk about standing up to the mafia. How did he stand up to the mafia?
Yeah, very, very, very good question. And nobody's asked me that in months. Actually, I'm not sure anybody's ever delved into that chapter and asked me the question. So I'm grateful for this. So during the 1980s, the mafia, particularly in Sicily, were really ruthless. I mean, they were kidnapping priests. They were bombing churches. John Paul II went into Sicily and he said, you need to stop this. You need to stop. You need to be converted. You need to give up your evil. And as soon as he did that, they set off another bomb in Rome at a church, like literally right after that. But he was relentless in calling out the mafia and telling them to stop, to convert. He was naming names even, and he was fearless. And you know, one of the things that John Paul said throughout his pontificate is, be not afraid. Don't be afraid to open up the doors of economics, of culture to Jesus Christ. And he meant it. And he even went so far as to not be afraid of losing his own life. And so you'd think that after being shot in St. Peter's Square, he would be kind of timid but he traveled the world and he waded out into the crowds and he was fearless. Now, it threw a scare into his security detail because they wanted to protect this Pope. They wanted him to be safe. Even in the United States, the U.S. Secret Service was in charge of helping to protect the Pope. And they saw what he was doing and they were afraid for him, but he was not afraid.
And he would
That's
always
incredible.
say, be not afraid, right?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
sure gave us
absolutely.
that example. He really trusted in the protection of God. And he believes that, you know, he had a devotion to the Blessed Mother. And Our Lady of Fatima, that was the day of the assassination, and he believed that she protected him, right? So,
Absolutely. So he was shot on May 13th, which is the same day that Our Lady appeared to the children in Fatima in 1917, and coincidentally, the day that he was shot. So he totally trusted that the Blessed Mother guided the bullet that was within millimeters of taking his life. And then a year later, exactly a year to the day after he was shot, he was in Fatima. He took that bullet that just missed his main artery near his heart and had it welded into the crown of Our Lady of Fatima in Fatima. And pilgrims who go there can see that statue today.
can you stay with us another segment? I'm asking you now because we kind of missed out on that first segment. If so,
Absolutely.
We just have like less than a minute. Can you tell us, I know that somehow you made Pope John Paul II laugh during one of your 5 visits with him. What did you do to make him laugh?
Actually, it was Pope Francis I made laugh out loud.
Oh,
I was
okay.
in Rome. I was
even
in Rome for the Rome. I was in Rome for the Rome Marathon, and I knew that 2 days earlier, Pope Francis had been presented with a finisher's medal as kind of a photo op for the Rome Marathon. So when it was my chance to talk to Pope Francis, I held his hand and I said, "Holy Father, on Sunday I'm running the Rome Marathon." And his English isn't so good. But when I could tell he understood me, I just leaned over and I said, "Please pray for me." and Cardinal Wuerl, who introduced us, he laughed out loud. Then the Pope laughed, and the Pope says, I do. And then I ran my very fastest marathon ever, I guess, due to the Pope's prayers.
Wow, yeah, that's some pretty powerful prayers going up there. So, okay, when we'll talk some more about Pope John Paul II and get some of his inspiration from Patrick when we're right back with Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Respect, innovation, trust, and excellence. These core values can be seen in every building built by Straightway Construction. In the community for over 15 years, Straightway Construction has become the premier construction company for commercial projects. From dirt to design and framing to finish, Straightway Construction is your #1 choice. You won't have to look far to find a project that has that Straightway touch. Call them today or go online to straightwayconstruction.com and let them make your vision a reality.
Deciding how to promote your business can be hard. Visit the professionals at Dakota Promotions and Printing and let them help you through your struggle. Dakota Promotions provides promotional items and apparel from corporate gifts to team shirts and everything in between. With quick turnaround times and friendly service, they are your best choice. And best yet, you're shopping local. Visit them online at dakotapromo.com or stop in their showroom at 320 West Main in Mandan. Dakota Promotions, delivering promotions just for you.
Every great pizza has a secret. At New York To Go, that secret lies in our perfectly recreated New York water, the key ingredient to making our signature New York-style pizza. We also feature gyros, with the region's only gyro meat spit, plus Nathan's hot dogs, calzones, and our delicious jumbo buffalo wings. Try a 14-inch or our special giant 20-inch pizza tonight. You gotta know how to fold them if you want to hold them. New York To Go, we deliver for you.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with 1 truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Hey Bucks fans, if you're planning an outing, birthday, or employee appreciation night, then bring your group out to the Buck Stop for a night of fast-paced, high-scoring football. Your group will receive discounted tickets, options for reserved seating, scoreboard messages, VIP services, swag, and a space to gather during the game. You can also participate in pre-game ceremonies, halftime entertainment, in-game contests, and more. Call 701-595-0771 or visit bismarckbucks.com/tickets. All GA is first come, first serve. We'll see you on the turf. Go Bucks!
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after-hours oasis of sanity.
How can these people not see that they're just clowns?
We help simplify and educate you on things going on in the legislature and around the country.
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
But also having Lee Stack and Sid and Marty Croft stuff, and we've talked about that sometimes. It's bad.
Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck, and welcome back with Patrick Navikovsky, and he is the author of 100 Ways That Pope John Paul II Changed the World. And if you're interested in getting a copy, you can get it at booksbypatrick.com. Easy to remember, booksbypatrick.com. And let's talk about Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II were very good friends. Tell us about that friendship.
Yeah, it actually began, I talked earlier about John Paul's first trip back to Poland as Pope in June of 1979. Reagan was not yet president of the United States. He was campaigning. I think he had won the nomination. He was at his ranch in California watching TV, and he's surrounded by his aides, and he's watching this amazing scene of the Pope going back to his homeland, being surrounded by millions of people. Now, if you remember, through the 20th century, there were two really staunch advocates against communism, Fulton Sheen and John Paul II. Fulton Sheen and Ronald Reagan. They were both relentless in telling about the dangers of communism. And here's Reagan, who's the newly about to be elected president of the United States in June of '79, watching the Pope. And he says to his friends, the Pope is the key. He is the key to ending communism in Eastern Europe. He knew it instinctively. So one of the first things he did as president of the United States is to establish diplomatic relations with the Holy See. There had been envoys back and forth and a semblance of diplomacy, but he appointed the very first ambassador. The U.S. ambassador to the Holy See was appointed by Ronald Reagan. I think it was 1981. And he started this outreach to John Paul II, and they really had a synergy. Both of them were actors. Both of them were athletes. Both of them were close to their fathers. Both of them were relentless against communism, and they just had so much in common that really drew them together. And in 1981, 40 years ago, Reagan was shot by an assassin in 6 weeks before John Paul II. So Reagan sends him a note telling him that he's praying for his recovery. John Paul had sent Reagan a note 6 weeks earlier praying for his recovery. So that incident really kind of cemented their friendship. Both of them, both these men, saw the fact that they recovered as a gift from God, an opportunity to kind of start again and to come together, and what Reagan called the divine plan to end communism in Eastern Europe. They really saw this as God's purpose for them and giving them a second chance at life.
I really miss them both right now.
Yeah, after seeing those photographs, that was...
Yeah. Wasn't that touching?
That was impactful.
Very beautiful. And he was very... Go ahead.
Yeah. And then fast forward to 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I really believe that had those assassins succeeded in 1981, we would be living in a very different world today. But as it is, God allowed them to live. They worked together. They collaborated. Communism fell. Berlin Wall fell. And in 1989, after Reagan's out of office, after his 2 terms, there's a group of diplomats from politicians from Poland who come to visit him at his ranch in California to get his advice and his direction on how to build democracy in Poland. And they noticed that there's this picture of John Paul II on his mantle above his fireplace. And Reagan says to them, he's my best friend. I know that I'm Protestant, he's Catholic, but he's still my best friend. And he really meant it. He really meant it.
That gives me goosebumps with you saying that. And I had mentioned earlier that Pope John Paul II always said that love is greater, that he really led with love. And you just felt it. I think that's why people loved him so much. He just exuded love. And another good friend of his was Billy Graham.
Yeah, right? And I didn't know this until I started writing my book. But Billy Graham and John Paul II exchanged correspondence. They met a couple of times, and Billy Graham went to the Vatican. They had this long meeting. I think it was like 30 minutes. And at the end of it, John Paul II grabs his thumb. He grabs Billy Graham's thumb, and he says, "We are brothers. We are brothers." And that really cemented. He had a way with people, you know. Even when I met him, there were brief meetings, but he was present. He was not thinking about something else. He was present. He was listening. And I'm wearing this suit jacket because it brings back these memories of me standing beside the Vicar of Christ and him listening to me. I mean, I was just a farm kid from Saskatchewan, and he's listening to me. I mean, that's extraordinary humility, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that we've just barely scratched the surface and all the amazing stories, but thanks for joining us, Patrick. And once again, you can go to Books by Patrick and get a copy of 100 Ways Pope John Paul II Changed the World. We'll be right back.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. We'll be right back with Ladies of Another View on Beck. Bye. We'll see you tomorrow. I guess we're not. Yeah, I said we're going to be right back. We're not going to be back.